just a thought. It's my opinion. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. Get out your feelings. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. It's my opinion. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. Get out your feelings.
Before we got rock and rolling, I told this gentleman we're pretty much the same person. And this is the first time we've really been able to have a real conversation. You might recall or know him from the Dear Future Wifey Podcast. He's the award-winning, top-rated, always trending, and often viral relationship podcast host, Laterras R. Whitfield. He's a 3-time Emmy-nominated producer, man after my own heart, cinematographer, national playwright, and a director. And we're going to talk about that, a whole bunch of other things, because he's always busy. Without further ado, Laterras, it's an honor, man. It's crazy. I feel like we met and said, hey, nice to meet you, and went about our merry way.
Yeah, we did that at the Stellar Awards.
Yeah, about a year later, here we are.
Yeah.
It felt like a year later. It
really was just a few months
about
ago.
3 months ago.
Just about 4 or 5 months
It's been
ago.
a long year.
Yeah, it has. But that's what's so great about it. When we've been running around, moving and shaking, then it just, time went by real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
So
great.
speaking of that, it's been a big year for you. Now, mind you, since you really got going during the pandemic era, I like to say, your podcast has really taken off. But, in light of that, this year in particular has also been major for you. What are you, and I know I ask this question of people often like yourself who are high achieving people. It's often difficult for you all to say, I'm proud of myself. What are you most proud of? What step did you take this year that makes you most proud?
That what I'm most proud of is the ability to be transparent and vulnerable.
Yeah.
And for that transparency and vulnerability to heal people across the world.
Yeah.
Because we talked about this before we push record, that to show up authentically in these spaces, it takes a lot of bravery. And to be able to be vulnerable in front of the world and put yourself out there to be judged and criticized and critiqued and possibly counseled, it's a task every single day. So I love the fact that I fully embraced my truth and who God called me to be, and I just walk in total transparency.
Let's talk about that walk, because I can only imagine it wasn't necessarily the easiest walk for you.
Absolutely not.
When do you feel like you turned the corner, especially being a black man, when it comes to transparency and just being able to be vulnerable?
In 2020, I did an episode with Joey Greco, who was the former host of the TV show Cheaters.
Yeah.
And he's a good buddy of mine. And I did an episode called To Cheat or Not to Cheat. And in that episode, I said I have to be transparent. And in that episode, I revealed that I cheated on my ex-wife. Now, my ex-wife and I are on good terms or whatnot. And so to talk about something that happened 5 years ago, it was like, and I had been divorced 5 years at that point, and I sent that interview to my ex-wife, and I said, I want your blessing before I released it. And she looked at it, she said, I like this. I like that you didn't shift blame on me or whatnot. You took you stood 10 toes down in the truth. And I said, all right. And so that was a pivotal moment for me, because at that time I wasn't sharing that with the world, and so I knew that something changed in the spirit realm, something shifted in that moment. But then I said it in that moment, but then a year later when I did an episode on Breenie Lee, she has a big YouTube channel, about 700,000 subscribers, most of them women.
Wow.
But then to be on that platform and share that and then have all those women, he's a narcissist, he's this. I'm like, what? A narcissist would never tell the truth.
I'm trying to be open here.
I'm trying to be
vulnerable.
open. I'm being vulnerable. And y'all telling me, I'm like, wow. And they're hearing me speak about something that happened so many years prior. But I understand that a lot of women were triggered by that, because a lot of them still haven't dealt with the pain that may have been caused to them by a man cheating on them. Or even what I started finding out is that they have been the mistress. And so they're projecting that on me, knowing that they were the quote unquote side chick. And so they, it's, and then in my DMs, they'll slide in and start telling me all these little confessionals and be like, well, thank you for being honest, King.
In the DM, they'll tell the truth. They'll cap in the comments.
Yeah, in the comments. I can't believe you. Why you got him on this platform? I hate men that cheat. I don't even want to watch Dear Future Wifey no more. I'm like, what in the world? I've been saying this for the longest. So it's a trip. I love the ability to, and the first time I knew that I was healed was when I was able to see so many negative comments and it not affect me.
Unbelievable.
Because when I went through this program at my church called Celebrate Recovery, I realized I had a codependency issue. I needed affirmation from people. That's my love language, is words of affirmation. And so if you criticize me or say negative stuff about me, I would take that inward and make me value myself less. And so to be able to read those comments and not be affected by it, I said, okay, God, I see what you're going to do now.
I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the podcast, but before I do, I want to stick with cheating for a moment.
Let's talk about it.
In a way that is not intrusive, but I want to get your take on something.
Talk to me.
So Selena Johnson, Grammy-nominated national recording artist, R&B diva, talk show host, the list goes on and on. She is on a talk show now called Crowned on In the Black Network. There's a clip that's going around that's viral right now where she is responding to one of her co-hosts asking her, is cheating a deal breaker? Now, Selena has been married for almost 16 years. She has, 2 beautiful children. They're teenagers. She said, in light of the fact of how long I've been married, I have 2 children.
Right.
Cheating is not a deal breaker for me. The people are going crazy.
I saw that clip.
They're losing their minds.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, and you being a man, you're on the other side of it. You're somebody who's experienced this as well. What say you to her response and also the responses she's getting?
I always say that, it's this old thing that we used to hear growing up, God will never put more on you than you can bear.
Yeah.
Certain people can handle cheating, some people can't. And so I always say that has to be reserved for each marriage.
Yeah.
And so even in my marriage, my ex-wife could handle it. Before we got married, she said, listen, if you ever cheat on me, it's over. It's a deal breaker. But then when it happened, she didn't just, toss me to the curb, because she started watching me go through the process of restoration and healing and getting accountability partners around me and going through therapy and whatnot. And so, but I couldn't forgive myself. The problem wasn't her, the problem was me. I kept saying I was a guy that would reprimand a lot of my homeboys for cheating. And so when I found myself operating in the lowest denominator of myself, I couldn't forgive myself. And so I felt like it would be better off if I filed for divorce. And so that began to be the reality. And so, but when I talk to different people, certain people say, I can't overcome someone cheating on me. And then you have some people that may look at it and go, you know what? And I hate for them to say that. They go, I've had women tell me this. After seeing my podcast, they'd be like, listen, I don't believe a man can be faithful in the first place. So if you and I were to get married, you can have a side chick. It doesn't bother me.
Wow.
And my response to that is, now you're speaking to the lowest version of me. I will never, ever okay that behavior because that's not what I desire.
Wow.
And so, as I said, for different people, it's different stuff. But for her, I understand what she's saying. She's saying it's not a deal breaker because she feels like there's so much invested in her marriage. They built legacy. They have kids. She says something about her kid is in high school and needs his father and all that type of stuff. So she feels as though that's not, cheating is not so bad that she would give up all of that and allow or watch her kids suffer by not having the father present in the home. So that's why I say it's to each his own. But it's also the point that if he were to cheat on her, then I would say she needs to pay really close attention on how he safeguards her heart and what restoration looks like.
Yeah.
Because it's different from somebody cheating and somebody that says, I am a cheater.
Correct.
So if he said, listen, I'm going to be smashing women everywhere and I don't care what you say, that's a difference. That's where the Bible said, I've given you over to a reprobate mind. And so that person says, I have no restoration. I am who I am and deal with it. That's a different type of heart posture.
Absolutely. I love your take on that. I want to talk about content creation. And, at the inception of the Dear Future Wifey podcast, everybody said, okay, now I'm at the crib.
Yep.
I have something to say.
Yep.
Podcast time.
Everybody.
Including myself.
Yeah.
And it's fun because we have production background, so we understand how these things go in a way that a lot of people that started podcasts did not. But still in all, there's still a process when it comes to not only content creation, but then disseminating that to the masses, and then on the other side of it, gaining an audience and influence.
Yes.
For you, what was the most challenging part of that journey, and what's been the most gratifying part of that journey?
The most challenging was consistency because I'm a creative. And so I don't like consistency. I haven't been in corporate America for years. So I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it and not have any type of structure.
Yeah.
And so when you're putting out content, it was times I was just tired. I just didn't want to record, or I didn't have a guest that weekend. And I would have my I call it the Lit Fam. They would comment and be like, hey, where's our episode this Wednesday? I'm like, I'm tired. You know what I'm saying? I am tired. And they like, because they likened it to watching their favorite TV show, like watching Power or something. They was like, where's my show? And so I started saying, okay, I have to be accountable to the people that I have been fostering and galvanizing this community. So then I said, okay, God, you said to whom much is given, much is required. So now let me be consistent. So the hardest thing was about me being consistent and for me to always show up authentic. Because if we start reading comments and someone says, well, I don't like when you do this, or you laugh too much at this, then it made me say, well, maybe I shouldn't laugh so much, or maybe I should do this. And I said, no, I'm going to be
laughing.
me.
It's funny.
It's funny. I'm going to be me. And I said, this is the space that I can be me. If you like it, we rock together. You're a part of my community. If you don't, then go find somebody else. Yeah. And it was me always recalibrating and showing up authentically how God made me every single episode. So it's not an episode. I remember it's an episode where the wig fell off of one of my guests. That was
we all remember that.
100 million views later. But people said, was that something y'all staged? Absolutely not. There's nothing in my podcast, nothing I say is staged. I don't write down, I'm going to say this line, I'm going to drop this gem at this moment. I let everything happen organically. So to always be consistent, show up with 100% authenticity was one of the hardest things to do because, like I said, you start looking at the metrics and looking at the rankings of your podcast. Yeah. Maybe I should do this, or maybe I should get this guest, or maybe, and it just wasn't authentic. And the other question was
most gratifying.
Most gratifying is to get all these DMs from people whose marriages have been healed and marriages have been restored. And people that DM me and they say, hey, listen, I know you're a really busy person. You're probably not even going to read this message. But my husband and I are going through XYZ. And I'll go, when will your husband be home? I'm going to video call you on IG. He'll be home at 5 o'clock. I'll video call, hey, what's up, King? Like, hey, bro, what's going on? Say, man, listen, man.
Is this a setup?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I told her I was sorry last night. Why you got this man on here? Man.
I love those moments. Listen, I love those moments. And so we'll be chopping it up with these people, talking to them, going through real marriage counseling.
Yeah.
Those moments where people have allowed me or have invited me into their hearts, invited me into their marriages, and they look at me and brothers, what's so great about brothers, it's hard for them to learn and listen to other people because the other people aren't revealing their scars. Most pastors or whatever, they're not saying, hey, I cheated on my wife, I did this or whatnot, I'm overcoming, whatever that is. But I lead with my scars. And so when the men see that, it makes them more receptive to say, hey, listen, I'll listen to that brother. Or they'll DM me and be like, say, brother, like much love to you, man, much respect for you. And so those moments is the most gratifying, is to hear that my story, my journey, my podcast is helping to save Black families.
Who was Laterras? Who were you before your podcast versus who you are? Well, we're on 4 years in almost. Right at the
it'd be 4 years in April.
Who are you?
Before the podcast, I was someone that was very private with my personal affairs. I would only share what I quote unquote wanted to share. I would do this thing called Daddy Diaries, where I would chronicle the journey of me and my daughter as she was matriculating through high school or whatnot. But it wasn't still that personal. Who I am now is very, very personal, very, very vulnerable, very, very transparent, and where now I just don't care what people say. You know what I'm saying? It's like I used to be like,
Isn't it fun?
Yeah, it's fun. It's amazing. You know how them old people they be getting 70, 80 years old. They don't care what they don't care. That's how I feel now. I feel like an old man to be like, child, and I can see through people. Like I can hear someone get mad at a comment or a post or a reel or a podcast episode, and I can see it as their trigger and not take offense. I'd be like, okay, let me talk to you. You probably experienced this before.
Yeah.
I know that you felt like this, and I know you probably felt like I took it lightly. I felt like I did an interview with Danae Jackson, and women were like, you're not taking her story seriously. You're laughing the whole time. And Danae told me, she said, had you not been laughing, she She said, because I'm quite hilarious. Had you not been laughing, our interview wouldn't have been that long. It would have probably been 15 minutes because reliving a lot of trauma that I've been through, I wouldn't have found it as a safe space. But the people watching in didn't realize she asked to be on my podcast after watching how I curated interviews and said, that's the only person I would trust with my story.
Wow.
And so to make sure I keep the main thing, my guest is the main thing, not the people weighing in.
Right.
But watching it, I was like, well, maybe I should have, and I had to check with her and say, did you ever think that I was taking anything lightly? She said, absolutely not. I had so much fun. I hated when it was over. It was a 2-part episode. So, to make sure that I stay dialed into what I feel and not care about what people say. Not saying that people don't have value. It's saying that I want to allow what you think of me to dictate how I move in God.
I love that. I want to move to the single folk for a minute. I'm one of them. I'm one of the single folk.
I'm one of them
too. So let me ask you this now. I just believe that we should be equipping ourselves foundationally with what is necessary to be in actual relationships.
Absolutely.
Or marriages or what have you. I don't know why I'm talking this way, but it feels good. But I think that, sometimes when people, tune in to podcasts that are relationship podcasts, they may say, oh, I'm single. I don't even know how this applies to me.
Yeah.
Without necessarily understanding that it's very applicable. Like you should surround yourself with people who embody what you would like to have or become.
Exactly.
Not covet, but surround yourself so you can learn. How do you feel your podcast speaks to people like us who are walking the single path, but who desire, and I'm not saying that I'm not sure if you do, but who desire to ultimately be married
Oh, absolutely. I desire marriage.
Come on,
that's the whole podcast.
He wanted to get another ring on.
Yeah, the podcast is, I said, journey with me as I discover, uncover, and recover love. I feel like I feel unsuccessful each year that goes by and I haven't remarried. That's the truth.
We are like the same person.
Man, I'm because I'll say next year, watch, and I've said it again, 2024.
Don't
I'm
you
gonna
get
be
sick
married.
of saying that? I'd be so tired. I'd be so tired.
Let me
Yes, I
tell you.
said it that way. It's exhausting.
One of my friends called me out. They said, "Didn't you say you're gonna be married last year?" I said, "Be wary when I stop saying it."
Well, first of all, that's mean. Why would you say that? Why would they say that to you like that?
You say that every year. You say that every year.
I do, and
I'm gonna keep on saying
it. So when you don't get invited to my wedding, you're gonna know why. I'm sick of it.
I'm sick of it. And so my podcast, that's what it is. I'll talk to singles. I'll have people on my podcast that are single, never been married, still desiring marriage, women who have taken the faith move to freeze their eggs because they still want to have kids, and the doctor has told them, hey, you're 35, you need to freeze your eggs, all that stuff. And so it keeps adding wrinkles to my brain about what the landscape of dating looks like now, because it was a whole lot different before I got married at 27. I got married at 28. Now I'm 45 years old. So everything looks different. Everything sounds different. We didn't have all these resources and podcasts talking about relationships and social media telling you, I want the soft life. I want a man that's paying 100% versus 50-50. And I'm like, we have all this information that's just like, oh my God, it's exhausting. But believe it or not, it's shaping how we date. Yeah. When you hear something go viral about a Cheesecake Factory date, you know what I'm saying? It's like now women or men start feeling like, okay, women require too much. I want to take this woman out, but do I have to go above my budget and take her to Ruth Chris when I can only afford Cheesecake Factory?
Right.
And not operate in the bravery of saying, listen, I ain't got it, but I really want to spend time with you. Can we just go out to eat here? You know what I'm saying? But it's shaping the ideology of how people date. And so my podcast has been a loud voice in the culture because we talk real. It's like, we're not finna sell you no smoke and mirrors. It's the truth. This is what it looks like. A lot of the couples that I have on my podcast that have thriving relationships, the couple I had a couple of weeks ago, the first date was in his car, and they were sitting there talking in the parking lot. He had just got out of jail.
God.
Yeah, he had got, hey, that might be your husband.
Love
so he just
after
lockup. Love on lockup.
Love after lockup. Look at that.
Look at God. So he had got out of jail 2 years prior. She had gotten out of jail a few months prior. She was one of my old high school classmates.
It's just the web you're weaving here is incredible.
Listen, they got married, got a divorce last year, and got re-engaged this year. She moved to Atlanta from Dallas. She said, I'm going to start over.
My God.
And she was dating somebody. He was dating somebody. And they began to start texting each other, reminiscing. And then they said, why are we doing this? You're where I want to be. You're home. And whoever they were dating at the time wasn't, footing the bill. So he's like, this just doesn't, we're not connected. And then they decide to do it all over again. So they're re-engaged.
Good for them.
Re-engaged. So just having real stories like that where it's not about money.
Yeah.
I want to get so far away from equating love and money like that. It's not real.
Yeah.
Because I remember I made a lot of money at a point in my life when I was touring shows, but when I lost a lot of money due to the economy and gas prices going up and touring stopped, I never felt like I deserved a wife at that point.
Wow.
I said, oh, well, I worked hard, I made this money, so now the next level is to get this wife. But I never took into account what happens when you lose that money. I no longer felt like I deserved to be married. And so I started self-sabotaging, feeling like I didn't deserve a wife.
That's so good. I want to stick with this in a moment. For right now, you talk about the wrinkle in your brain and all the experience, the knowledge you've gained, and also just speaking to what you just mentioned. Your number one dating tip for somebody who is like us on their journey to find love, based on the landscape of where we are, based on what you know, based on what you've learned. Number one tip.
I would say prioritize your healing. Because whatever you went through prior to meeting your husband, he's going to have to deal with that, or she's going to have to deal with whoever mismanaged your heart, whatever those experiences are. And oftentimes when you meet somebody, they become a mirror reflecting everything that you've been through.
Yeah.
And so that moment when he doesn't answer the phone, and you're getting triggered. You like, is he ghosting me? Is he this? He like, no, I was in the bathroom. I left my phone.
When I tell you, we're doing this. Girl, now I text him 5 minutes ago. He is not responding. That's it. I'm not going to talk to him. That's it. I'm done with him.
Let me tell you something. I had to go through that myself when I started dating because before I launched the podcast, I was involved in this toxic situationship. This woman would always keep her phone down. So if I go out with a woman, her phone is down, I'm looking like, why her phone down?
Right.
If her phone is on silent, I get triggered because the girl used to keep her phone on silent all the time. Like, what you hide? My phone is up. You know what I'm saying? I would just find myself being triggered, but I'll be open about it. I'll talk about it and be like, why do you always have your phone on silent? I just hate, my notifications going all off my phone or whatever. And I'm like, okay.
Was that the truth?
I don't know. I'm saying like the women I date now, if that's the case, I'll just be like, I don't project what I experienced with them and be like, oh, she's a liar, she's a cheater, she's this or whatever. Yeah. But very well, it pops up in my mind, and so because that woman would always be shady. She always has some extracurricular activities going on. You know what I'm saying? And so meeting somebody else that's doing the same, I'm like, what you got going on?
Maybe this is a trend.
Yeah,
maybe all these women
Maybe
out
I
here
keep
cheating.
picking. What is going on? So the reality is that to go through your healing journey, so that you can give voice to whatever you're feeling. Because a lot of times you're feeling certain things, you're just not saying it. You're like, I'm gonna watch him. I'm gonna watch him. He probably doing this. She probably doing that. But you won't give grace to that person and say, hey, I noticed this, and this is what I've experienced in the past.
Yeah.
Would you be open to changing that? Oh, you want to I ain't no big deal. And you go, oh, okay. Or they'd be like, well, this is why I do it or whatever. And then you have an opportunity to accept and say, okay, I can deal with that or not.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all a choice. So heal first so that you can actually show up authentically in relationships. And so it's a two-part thing to show up as your authentic self. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Like whatever it is, I say that to people all the time. If you know for a fact you can't be monogamous, stop trying to get in relationships. You go find you somebody that's polyamorous and you go get in that type of relationship. Whatever it is, be who you are. You know what I'm saying? Just straight up honest. Ooh. Because whatever you are, and I found this when I talk to people, you can always find somebody that will match you, whatever you are. If you love hugging trees, you can find, it's a whole community.
It is a tree hugger out there for you.
Out there for you. Whatever it is you like, you can find it. It's there. That's why I say if you learn to heal from whatever that you've been through and then show up authentically. I'm
still on tree hugging. Hold on.
Would you date a tree hugger?
No.
What if he just says he loves
What
nature?
made you say tree hugger though?
Because I
There
had to
was
think of
so
something
many
real
other
crazy.
things you could
I
have
just
said.
had to say tree hugger because that's just, it's. I seen that on Facebook one day, and it's a whole community of people that they love. I saw a video of this lady who divorced the Eiffel Tower, and now she's dating a gate. She is married to a fence. You said Jesus be a fence. I guess that's what she had.
What are your Google search histories looking like?
Man,
I'm
it just
concerned.
be popping up. I have no control over what be going on. It just be popping up. The Holy Spirit be wanting me to see this stuff. I don't know, but think about it. If that's somebody you dated that loves that stuff, then you gotta whatever it is that you like. There's a whole community of those people.
Yeah.
100%. So that's why I say find out who you are and then show up authentically and don't try to pretend. Let somebody know whatever it is. If you have high levels of insecurity, talk about that. I had guests on my podcast where the woman says I was extremely insecure, and she projected that on her husband. The husband said, "I'll have to work a little bit harder. Here's the passcode to my phone. What do you need? I know I have to answer the phone." And they had to go through years of that until she can go, I can actually trust you. But if you love somebody that much, you'll be willing to go through it.
It's just a thought. It's just a thought. Just my opinion. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. Get out your feelings. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. Just my opinion. It's just a